So thank you very much. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Um, my profile has already been shared with you,
Yes.
so I'm not really going to get into too much detail, except to tell you that I'm not some sant and yogi who has come here to take this session for you. I'm very much a corporate bred individual who has lived his life in companies like Metal Box, Johnson and Johnson, Gillette Institute of Quality, and Airtel, and have been practicing on my own. Some of my own life lessons have taken me into this whole aspect of holistic well-being and being well, or what is now being called a new mind for a new world. So we'll spend the next 1 hour 45 minutes to 2 hours in this session, and thank you very much for being attentive and for making it here in time. So, since you have already had a morning where you would have been involved in work, we will just start with a little bit of centering music to just help us all come together into the present moment. Present moment is interestingly a moment where there are no worries. Um, so just be with yourself, just enjoy the music for a little more than a minute. Your eyes can be open or closed as comfortable. So each one of you has a chat box. We will use this chat box for all engagement with each other, and we will use a Q&A box where you can ask me specific questions. Try and avoid asking questions in the chat box because I might just miss them. And we'll take the Q&A questions a little later because some of these questions might get answered as we proceed. So in the chat box, if you can change the default setting to all panelists and attendees where you have to type your message, just above that, select all panelists and attendees and answer for me exactly how are you feeling after being with this music for just about a minute and a half? How are you feeling? Okay, very peaceful. Feeling good, sir. Music was soothing. This okay is a very new generation phrase. Huh? How you feeling? Okay. How you feeling? Fine. How you feeling? Good. So do give a few more words to it if you don't mind. Calm, relaxed. Music was soothing. I'm not looking at the chat box, so I hope you're responding only in the. Sorry, I'm not looking at the Q&A box, so I hope you're all responding only in the chat box. Divine. Okay. Feeling very lazy. Yes. I think when you listen to soothing music like that, the body wants to relax. And one form of being relaxed is also feeling very lazy. So if I may suggest that if you're feeling very lazy, just rub your hands like this, generate a fair amount of heat, and put it on your eyes and generally your face. That's one way to make you feel a little more awake. The other is that take your ears and just massage your lower portion of the ear, both of them, the lobes like this. That's another way. Our teachers used to do this to actually improve our concentration in class. We used to think of it as a punishment. One more question, that at the moment I put on the music, did any one of you change your posture? And if you did, what exactly did you change in your posture? Yeah, so thank you for your responses to the first question. Now on to my second one. Relaxed in the chair and came back. So one is that you might have just leaned back a little bit. This is how you relaxed in the chair and then maybe became a little straighter. Any other action that your body performed more or less spontaneously when you went into this listening to music? Okay. Relaxed in chair, came back, listened to the music with calm. That's great. Thank you. Looking outside to the nature. So if you are there, you had the opportunity to actually connect in a way with nature. Beautiful. So we'll get into this in a little greater detail somewhat later, but even the body, when it wants to participate fully in the mind being calm, it'll actually do a few things spontaneously. But if you do those things consciously, then actually you attain a higher state of calmness. So I will share with that with you a little bit later. So let me come to the first two questions that I have from this group. The first is, what has been your biggest learning of 2020, especially after the pandemic broke, if I might call it that? What have you really learned personally or professionally, if you can type in the chat box? Okay, so bathing twice. All right. And I wonder, how do you deal with the whole issue of water conservation when you bathe two times? Do you still take a big shower bath, or do you even conserve water, Ravindra? Because that's the other problem with this pandemic and the water consumption, which might become a different problem. Yeah. So being conscious to the environment also requires a balancing out by consuming less water. Sometimes when we are asked to wash our hands for 20 seconds, also we'll keep the water running. But just imagine what happens if 1.3 billion people start to consume this water in our country at 5 to 10 times the normal rate. As it is, we have a problem. So that's the other flip side that we need to be mindful of. But yeah, biggest learning. need to be hygienic, restricted your travel. So this is what you were doing. What's the learning? What's your learning about yourself, about life? We should lead a consistent and disciplined life, whatever the situation. So that's your learning, okay? The importance of physical fitness. Excellent. And the importance of physical fitness, why? Because it gives you immunity. What's the reason, Thangadurai, that you're saying physical fitness is important? Thangadurai, you're typing for all panelists. So kindly, even Muni Raju, you'll have to change your setting to all panelists and attendees. In the to box, please select all panelists and attendees and then write. Otherwise, only two of us will see it. Technology is nothing in front of nature. Absolutely. Absolutely. Life is uncertain. So the whole aspect of uncertainty starts to hit you. Taking care of parents and children more. So suddenly you realize the need. A couple of more responses, and then I'll move to my next question. So somewhere the need to connect with the family, the need for physical fitness for raising the immunity, absolutely. The whole aspect of uncertainty. So how do you live life when there is uncertainty? What are your aids when life is uncertain? Becomes an important question to answer. Second question, what is the biggest challenge that you're still facing? Yeah, health is more precious, absolutely. So what is the biggest challenge that you're still facing? So some of the learnings you've had and you move beyond that, but you still have some challenges at home, at work, for yourself. Tension when you come to know COVID-19 to a near one, absolutely. So there is a certain amount of stress that develops. And if there is a near one, then the feeling is, mujhe na ho jaye. No freedom even for breathing. Wow, absolutely. That's a great insight. Of course, I mean, if you learn a little bit about COVID, you will realize that fortunately, at least that's what the CDC says, it's not an airborne virus. So if you are away from everybody, you can still breathe normally and easily, I hope. Lack of awareness among the people, yeah. Need vaccination and cure, sure. Needing a vaccination and cure is definitely a general global challenge, I would say. Not able to meet with friends and relatives as you used to, yes. So therefore, connecting with them deeply becomes a little difficult. The importance of virtual communication is your learning, I guess. The challenge might be the fact that you have to only communicate virtually. Right. So whilst there are certain things that we have learned to deal with, there are still some things that become important for us to be considering and taking care of. So I want to share with you a concept of stress and its management. If you look at the causes, for example, what are the causes of stress? Because remember, stress is actually very central to this entire conversation and for this webinar as well. Because if we can manage stress in whichever way, we will find that it will be easier for us to deal with our life. So if I look at stress, we talked about fear. The fear emerging from two things. One is the fear of contracting COVID, and the other is the whole uncertainty. Many of us are facing uncertainty in terms of whether we will have a job or we will not. You know, so many people have actually lost their job. People have had to take salary cuts. So all of that introduces a natural uncertainty. We have overwork. In many cases, we thought that this whole working from home will be easier. But for many of us, it's been more difficult because there are no boundaries now between family and home time. And suddenly the boss may log on at 11 a.m. and will go on till 7 p.m., but you have logged on at 9 a.m. So at times you are working much longer hours and you can't seem to get away. And especially for a global organization like yours, by the time your daytime ends in India, it's morning in the US, and therefore now you have to deal with your bosses in the US or people in the US wanting questions and reviews. So there is a lot of overwork, and all of this put together psychologically causes a lot of overwhelm. Would you agree with these? All of these? Fear of uncertainty, fear of contracting COVID, overwork, overwhelm. Is there anything that I'm missing as what causes stress? So let's look at the consequences. One is certain biological consequences. For example, when you're stressed, your body actually generates more cortisols. I'm not going to get too much into the biology, but understand that these are the hormones which actually help us to deal with stress, deal with the response of fight, flight, freeze, as compared to, so fear of media news, absolutely. So as compared to a normal situation, cortisols are, they create a certain response in the body, which is physical in nature, which is physiological in nature, which is also psychological in nature. Now, these cortisols actually cause ailments. If you continue to be in a state of panic, in a state of stress, it's easy for you to get other ailments. You also have lower immunity. And because of lower immunity, the chances of contracting COVID actually increase. The other consequence is perhaps undesirable social behaviors. A lot of people exhibit anger. So you are withdrawing yourself at times, people go into a kind of a depression at times, and you may, when you're depressed, you may express anger or you may completely cut yourself off. So stress has many consequences, and therefore it's extremely important to manage this stress. So in managing stress, there are typically two areas. One is the whole area of de-stressors. And the second is the ability to manage time in a way that we don't feel overworked and overwhelmed. So when it comes to de-stressors, there are typically 5 areas. Physical is something that we are mostly aware of, and we have physical de-stressors. So what are some of the physical de-stressors that you use in your life? Can you just share with me quickly? What are the physical de-stressors that you use? Walking, absolutely. It's one of the most common ones. Exercising. Yoga, absolutely. So walking, exercising, yoga, absolutely. By the way, to build immunity, not just stress, but there are also some people who say things like haldi doodh, and maybe there are some other natural treatment. So immunity can be built in multiple ways, but one big way to build immunity is managing your stress. Yeah, so physical, you have mentioned many of these things. Music is not so much physical, Velepu. It's probably starts to come more into the emotional and mental de-stressor, because when you're listening to music, it does something to your mind and it soothes it. Just like you listen to the music, so whilst you were sitting down and doing nothing, you were still relaxing. So listening to music or listening to a song starts to move into the area of emotional and mental. So other than physical, there is emotional, mental, relational. These are the 3 things that I will be covering today with you, because the idea is to improve your ability to manage your stress going beyond the simple physical means. And the last one is spiritual. I'm not going to get into details in this session for spiritual de-stressors, but spiritual de-stressors are more in the arena of living in authentic ways with authentic to your values and authentic to who you are. So, figuring your life purpose and living in authenticity with life purpose. Yeah, so Giridhar, you raised your hand. Would you like to ask a question? Is there a specific question that you have? Or is it by mistake that you have raised your hand? You can just type in the chat box itself if there is something. So basically, my session today is focusing on managing stress by giving you certain principles and practices for emotional, mental, and relational self-care. If there is any question at this stage, please put it in the Q&A box. I will answer it at an appropriate time, not necessarily just now. So I'm going to share with you the first de-stressor in the mental space, which is a breath awareness practice. And before we get into a breath awareness practice, let us hear Nitya Shanti talk about the breath awareness practice. Just to give you a sense, Nitya Shanti is an ex-Buddhist monk and also an MBA from XLRI. He came back from his Buddhist monastery about 12 years ago, and he's been teaching principles and practices of happiness to people. And he also has a YouTube channel, and there is a lot more that you can pick up from here. I follow him and I work closely with him. So a lot of my work is inspired by what Nitya has taught me and taught the world in general. So first, something about the breath awareness practice in his own words. And note the key points, please.
So one thing that's always with us from the moment we're born till the moment we die, including when we sleep, is our breath. In a way, it's a neighbor of ours. And as you all know, if you make friends with your neighbor, then whenever required, your neighbor can be of assistance. So our breath is one such neighbor. It's always with us. Do we pay attention to our breath? The beautiful thing about the breath is it will continue whether you consciously intended to or not. It's always there. But there's some amazing qualities of the breath. Breath represents neutrality. Neither do we get greedy for more and more breath, nor do we want to push away the breath. The breath is just the breath. So there's no craving, there's no aversion. There just is the simplicity of the breath. And if we can learn to reconnect to our breath, enjoy the simple act of breathing, which is happening by itself, then we find a very beautiful foundation, which we can return to again and again and again. There was a teacher, and a student brought him a brochure, a very fat brochure, of a big meditation center. And this meditation center had all kinds of different courses, all kinds of different programs, all kinds of different things you could learn. And he asked the teacher, which one should I do? And the teacher went through the brochure and said, this is very interesting. Each of these programs looks really nice. But let me tell you something that's even more valuable than any of these programs. Any time in the day when you're doing nothing else, bring your attention back to the breath and just enjoy the feeling of breathing. Enjoy that sensation of breathing. And something as simple as that, it immediately brings us back to the present, helps us connect to our body, and brings us to a place of neutrality, impartiality. Not pulling, not pushing, just being. So this is a beautiful practice, awareness of breath.
So what are some of the key things about the breath that you're picking up from this short clip? I'm going to answer this question of how I can understand I am stressed a little later. Galaxy M30, if you can just share your name, it helps me to know that instead of saying answering to Galaxy M30. Yeah, so what are some of the key things about breath that you just picked up? No response? Yeah, thanks, Shani. So Shani, I'm just waiting for people to respond to my question regarding the breath, and then I'll answer your question. So what are some of the features of breath? Okay, breathing practice to be done daily is the how part of it, yes. But the most important thing about breath is it's always there with you, right? Always there with you. If it's gone, then you know what's happened. So breath is a constant companion, but we are not aware of it. Yeah, so Rupa, very good point. When we are stressed, we experience a shortness of breath. So that is also an answer to what Shani was asking. Yeah, feeling the breath. So whilst we are not aware of breath, but just getting in touch with our breath actually gets us in touch with the neutrality that a breath represents. So simply becoming breath aware is our best access to a neutral state of being, a neutral state of mind. Yeah, so high breath, absolutely. So I think the important thing is one of the indicators of stress is when your breath is uneven. Usually you will find that your breath either becomes short or it becomes high, okay? So that's one way in which you experience stress. Some of the other ways in which you can experience stress, does anybody need to? Yeah, oxygen is needed by our body and our breath helps us deliver that, and our breath also helps us take away the undesirable prana, energy, carbon dioxide. So when others experience stress, for Shani's benefit, can you say, how do you really know that you're stressed? Yeah, you can ignore other things, you can't ignore breath. But yeah, breath is something we actually ignore. We live with it, but we don't really realize that we're living with our breath. Yeah, so there is a sensing of heat in the body. Yeah, so more workload and tension is a cause of stress. But how is stress experienced? So remember, a stress is experienced in the body. Your body can become taut, tighter. It's also possible that because of a certain amount of energy which is getting stuck in the body, some part of your body may actually experience pain as well. Yeah, you may make more mistakes when you're stressed, but at the first level, stress makes your mind not so calm. You may be losing your temper, you may be withdrawing from others, not really wanting to talk to them. You have a sense of tightness in your chest. That's at least what I can say for myself, a tightness in the chest. So your body experiences it and your mind experiences it, and therefore your emotions also respond to it. So let's understand that breath being such an important thing, one of the best exercises for mental de-stressing is actually using what is called a breath awareness practice. Sometime in 2004, I attended a 10-day Vipassana session. Has any one of you heard of Vipassana? Vipassana, Vipassana. Yes, when you're stressed, your mind also blocks. Absolutely right, Bharat. So Vipassana it's a 10-day practice of what is called noble silence or Arya Mon. It actually comes from a Buddhist lineage, and it's a practice that was initiated by a guru called S.N. Goenka ji. And what you do in this noble silence is not only are you supposed to be quiet over these 10 days, so naturally your mobile phones and all are taken away, but mostly you are silent. You can only go and ask a guru some questions or clarifications that you may need to seek. Other than that, you're completely quiet over 10 days. And you are not also supposed to read anything. That's why it's called a noble silence, which means your mind cannot be fed anything. And for the first 4 days, 3 to 4 days, you're doing a simple breath awareness practice, which is called Anapana. And let me just tell you the significant aspect of Anapana. So, for example, right now as you're breathing, can you just become aware of the air entering your nostrils? Just become aware of the air entering your nostrils. And as you breathe in, some of you might feel a slight cooling sensation, which is the capillary effect. You know, many of you are engineers, so you will understand. Yes, Igatpuri is one of the many centers, Maruti. So when you're breathing in, because of the capillary action, as the air goes inside, you will find a slight cooling sensation. Just tell me if any one of you can feel that cooling sensation. As you breathe in, a mind cooling sensation as the air travels upwards. So just stay with it for a few seconds. And now just focus on the breathing out. When you're breathing out, what you will find is that it's the reverse of cooling. So because there is an expansion, there is a warmth. And you will find a little bit of warmth on the upper part of your upper lip. Where of course my mustache is, but this is the point where you will feel a bit of a warm breath. So when you're practicing breath awareness, what you're doing is that you're actually taking your attention and bringing that attention only to an in-breath, when you could feel a mild cooling sensation, or simply the breath going in with or without that sensation of coolness, and similarly an out breath where you may feel a warm sensation. So what I would like you to do now is just sit in any posture with your spine relatively straight. What I mean by relatively straight is you may not always want to be like this, but if you have the back of a chair and if you want to relax, relax on the back of the chair, but hold your neck up a little bit so that you can feel a slight opening of the spine, especially where your neck is. So if you want to be straight, you can be straight. If you want to be back a little bit, you can be. But spine straight is one of the criteria. The second criteria is your hands must be symmetric. So you could be holding them like this. You could be keeping them like this on the top of your legs, just above your knees, or you could be keeping them like this, or you could be keeping them on the side of the chair if you have armrests. Whichever way you keep your hands and your legs, they must be symmetric. So spine straight, hands and legs symmetric are two important conditions. Once you've done that, the third thing that I want you to focus on is your breathing. Now, what you will find is that when we are breathing, there are two ways in which you can breathe. One is when you get to expand your chest and contract your chest. You know, I remember in school days when they used to ask us to give measurements of our chest at times when the doctors would come for a checkup. They would say, breathe in, and we would expand our chest. But here, the proper yogic breathing is actually called breathing with the belly, which means when you breathe in, just see that your belly is moving out a little bit. And when you breathe out, your belly goes in. So actually, naturally, we do belly breathing, especially you will notice it with small children. Their belly is very prominently moving in and out. And that is because they are actually breathing the right way. Over a period of time, we forget to breathe the right way. So use your belly. So for just the next 15-20 seconds, become aware of your belly movement and very consciously see when you're breathing in, does your belly go out? And when you're breathing out, does your belly push in a little bit? So just try that. And tell me if you can feel that. And scientifically also, belly breathing is actually the right way to breathe, because when your belly is pushing out, your diaphragm has more space to move down. And because of that, the amount of oxygen or prana that you take inside your lungs is actually more than what you would normally take. And similarly, on its way out, when your belly is pushing itself in, the diaphragm is forced to move up and the air is expelled more forcefully and in more quantity, the carbon dioxide that you need to get rid of. So three things. Can you just tell me by typing it in, what's the first thing I mentioned? So what are the three things I mentioned in terms of preparedness for doing the breath awareness practice? Yeah, sitting with a straight spine, wonderful. Yes, spine. What is the second thing? What about your hands and legs? Yes, hands and legs must be positioned symmetrically, both hands and legs. Yes, comfortable, absolutely, but symmetric. So for example, don't hold them like this or, like this. Yeah, so breathing with belly. So these are the three things. And where will you be focusing when you're doing your breath awareness practice? Your focus is primarily directed in this small space, which is just your nose and the portion right below your nose, which is above your upper lip. So we will now start the practice of breath awareness. And for the next 1 minute, we will do a breath awareness practice. The only thing to be remembered is that when you're doing a breath awareness practice, it is possible that some thought comes in. When the thought comes in, you will suddenly find that you're no longer focused on your in-breath and out-breath. But the moment you realize it, like a good badminton player who always comes back to the center of the court before taking the next shot, just gently bring yourself to the center. You don't need to chide yourself. You don't need to danto yourself saying, kya yaar, you are getting lost in thoughts. Just come back. So for the next 1 minute, let's do a simple breath awareness practice. You can keep your eyes open or you can close your eyes. Sometimes people feel sleepy when they're keeping their eyes closed. So you can also do it with your eyes open. So let's start this practice now. Okay, so whenever you're ready, if your eyes are closed, open them. Once again, rub your hands, put them over your eyes, your face. And sometimes if any part of your body needs healing, you can also place those hands over that part of your body and emerge with a smile. So this is a simple breath awareness practice. So just like when you listen to that music for a minute, minute and a half, and you felt calm, tell me if you could access the same feeling with this breath awareness practice, and if there is any comments you have about how you felt. Yes, absolutely. Feels calm. Feeling energetic. Okay, so as opposed to when you were listening to music, you're feeling energetic. So, Deb, were your eyes open or closed, just to help me understand? Mind is relaxed. Eyes were closed. Okay, good. So I think what also happens, Deb, for the first time when you were coming back from an environment where you were already working, maybe certain stresses were there, the first time the relaxation hit you. Right now, you're probably more used to the idea of being relaxed. So this could be one of the reasons. I can't possibly tell you all the reasons. Yeah. So now what you must remember is what I just taught you is actually available to us all the time. All the time. And there are some very big consequences of doing breath awareness practice, more than what you can believe. Your blood pressure can come under control. Even though I don't want you to stop taking your medications if a doctor has prescribed for you, but it is very good for hypertension. It is also very good for diabetic patients, because the moment your mind is calm, the production of your cortisols and the hormones in your body gets regulated. It's very good for becoming equanimous, samatha, and therefore dealing with your emotions like anger, etc. So it's not just a matter, just doing this exercise few times a day can have a great impact on you. So I just want to make sure that we all understand the key points: straight spine, symmetric hands and legs, a simple awareness of being conscious. I'm not asking you to be concentrated here, okay? Just simple. When you're practicing concentration, you may be looking like this and you're very focused. For example, when you're trying to solve a maths problem, you're very concentrated. But here it's a gently held awareness and a gently held concentration in that sense. That's why I use the word conscious and not concentrate. And come back to the center if you get distracted. And the last but not the least, belly breathing. So these are some of the key points of working with a breath awareness practice. So the question that I have for you is, for how long, when you decide to do a breath awareness practice, for how long do you think you should do it? Five minutes, 3 minutes? Yeah. Anytime means one is you can do it anytime. The other is for a period of time that you might feel comfortable, right? 3 minutes, 10 minutes. So one of the things that I might share here, in fact, there is a very interesting video on YouTube. I would like you to see that video. I'm putting it in the chat box. It is called One Moment Meditation. The principle of one moment meditation is the focus is not on the amount of time. In fact, what he says is practice no more than a minute. And what some of us can do is that in the beginning, when we want to practice for approximately a minute, you can count the number of breaths that you take in a minute roughly. Usually you will find that you're taking between 6 to 10 breaths a minute. 6 to 10 in breaths and 6 to 10 out breaths. So at a simple count, if you don't want to even look at a watch, you can simply count your breaths to 6, 8 or 10 as the case may be. And that is what gives you your minute. what he says is do as many as you can. So which means the focus is more on frequency than on the amount of time you want to stay with the breath awareness practice. Of course, people who are meditating and they are going deeper, they will actually do this for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 1 hour as well. So great, Bharat, daily 20 minutes in morning and during before sleep. Again, my invitation to you is don't go for length right now. You don't have to be macho about length right now. More important thing is access it as often as you can. 3 to 5 times in a day is great. Morning, wonderful. Before going to sleep, wonderful. Maybe somewhere close to lunchtime, etc., wonderful. Close to evening time, when you start to feel the stress a little bit, wonderful. So, these are the classical 4 or 5 times. Somebody also asked me that, should we practice this breath awareness after lunch or before lunch? So any ideas about that? What could be the possible pros and cons? Given a choice, would you do it before lunch or after lunch, or before a meal, after a meal? Before a meal. And why would that be important, Dr. Radheshyam? Why would you do it before? So why before? Why not after? Okay, so Shaik says after. So very good point. Belly should be empty. So what happens is that because you're doing belly breathing, Shaik, after lunch, 2 things happen. One is you're feeling sleepy. So when you're trying to do any breath awareness practice, the chances are you will actually start snoozing a little bit. So, there are other practices that you can do which might be more useful. So both to make sure that your belly breathing is not impacted by the fact that your stomach is full. This is usually recommended before a meal rather than after a meal. Okay. So any more questions on breath awareness practice before I move forward? If you have, please ask me. You can put them in the Q&A box rather than in the chat box. Any questions? So I don't have any so far, so I'm going to move. Even if they come, just keep putting them there. So this was the breath awareness practice, always available to you, brings a sense of equanimity, helps you manage your anger better, helps you get your mind to an even-tempered state at any point in time. Now, something that you could do after lunch or something that allows for movement rather than a simple breath awareness practice where you're sitting down is what I call a walking meditation. So this is the second mental de-stressor. Now, please remember that a walking meditation is not equal to walking in the nature as you normally do. Whilst that is also meditative in practice, whilst that is also going to help you de-stress, but this walking meditation, the key difference is that there is a lot of awareness. So whilst you are aware of breath in breath awareness meditation, in walking meditation, you have to be aware of the movement. So first I'm going to show you the practice and then I will ask you some questions. Ideally speaking, this should have been done when we were all together face to face and maybe actually practicing it in front of each other. But doesn't matter if that's not available. Hopefully this video will give you some idea and then we will discuss it in more detail. So walking meditation.
Walking meditation is performed with the feet close together, the hands, right hand holding the left hand, either in front or in behind. The eyes are open and you're looking at the floor in front of you about 2 meters out. And you're going to walk in a line. You can walk about 3 or 4 meters with your eyes looking at the floor in front, the ground in front of you, about 2 meters or 6 feet out. You start with the right foot and you move it 1 foot length with the heel just to be in line with the toes of the back foot. And then the same with the left foot. 1 foot length each time. As you do this, you say to yourself, as we have been from the beginning of this series, you make a note of the motion as it occurs. So here we say to ourselves, stepping right, stepping left, stepping right, and so on. Making the acknowledgement or the note, making the noting at the moment of the movement. Stepping left, stepping right, stepping left, stepping right, stepping left, stepping right, stepping left, and on until you reach the end of the walking path. Once you come to the end, we have to turn around. We're going to walk in the other direction. The method of turning around is to bring the back foot up to stand next to the front foot. As you do this, you say to yourself, stopping, 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 just coming aware of the fact that you're stopping. Once you're standing still, say to yourself, standing, standing, standing. And when you go to turn around, the method of turning is to lift the right foot off the floor and turn it 90 degrees, saying to yourself, 1 time, turning. And then the left foot the same, turning. And 1 more time, turning, turning. And then you're facing the other direction. When you're standing in the other direction, you start all over, say to yourself, standing, 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 and then stepping right, stepping left, stepping right, stepping left. And the most important part is that you're making the acknowledgement as the foot moves. So if you say to yourself, stepping right and then move, or you move first and then say stepping right, this is incorrect because you're not really aware of the action as it occurs. To make a correct acknowledgement and to bring about the clarity of mind which we're hoping for, you have to move the foot as you make the acknowledgement. Stepping right, stepping left.
So those of you, I mean, this is actually a 10-minute video, gets into a lot more detail. And if any one of you wants to know more about this exercise, you could probably Google walking meditation on YouTube and watch this complete video. However, this gives you a basic sense. So first, I want to ask you some questions just to check understanding. So when you start the process, which hand holds which hand? Right hand holds the left hand. Now let me clarify here for you that if you're a left-hander and if there is a natural tendency for the left hand to hold the right hand, it's not a big deal. As long as you are consistently doing what you're doing, because there is a certain energy flow that gets directed. And therefore, if you want to do left hand holding right hand on a consistent basis, you can go right ahead and do that, not a problem. So right hand holds left is the typical instruction. The second is, should your hands be in front or should your hands be at the back? Absolutely. Either way is fine. Some people prefer to walk with the hands in front of them. Some people prefer to walk with their hands held at the back. Either way is fine. But the main thing to be aware is that your hands are not left free, because you are focusing all the awareness of the movement with your legs, and the hands are not to be brought into the movement. So that is one of the reasons why they are held together. Okay. The next question is, where are your eyes looking? Yeah, so 2 meters away can be up 2 meters away, straight 2 meters away, down 2 meters away. Is there any particular significance or one versus the other? So front, Dr. Radheshyam says in front. So actually that's not correct. I think, sorry, again, I forgot the name of Galaxy M30, but 2 meters down is correct. Your eyes are not meant to be straight. Your eyes are meant to be looking down a little bit. And again, there is a scientific reason for it. What happens is that if your eyes are looking directly in front, you may observe movement in front of you, because somebody might be passing by, or even birds could be flying and they will come in your line of sight. The moment there are things coming in your line of sight, it causes a sense of distraction. So by keeping it down a little bit, you are minimizing your distraction. Of course, you can have a lizard or some insect also crawl past, but that's okay. It's relatively less, and therefore that is what is recommended. The next question is, what is the leg movement like? I mean, what is the length of the step that you ought to be taking? What is the length of each step? Yeah, 1 feet at a time. So for example, this is not a fashion walk where the foot comes like this. If you see the fashion walk on the ramp, especially what ladies do, they will bring their foot like this. It's not like that. So it is this toe or 1 foot, it will more or less come in line with the other foot. So it's at the toe level versus the other foot. So that is the distance, because otherwise if it's too close, then the chances are that you might fall. So the idea is to maintain a reasonable gap between your 2 feet and to walk roughly 1 foot length. And here all I would say is roughly. Some of you may be more comfortable keeping your foot a little more than that 1 foot. And that's okay. The taller ones especially might find that they are more comfortable doing that. The idea is comfortably walking. That is the most important one. And when you are actually keeping these steps, when you are actually taking these steps, is there something that you're saying? So Deba, straight line 1 foot, as I said, it's not straight line like this, but a little like this, okay? There's a bit of a gap. Otherwise, straight line means you could topple over. So in order to keep stable, your legs have to be a little apart. So when you're actually walking, is there something that you're saying? You may not be saying it out loud, but are you saying it to yourself? So I wonder if the responses have a phase lag. But for example, what he says is stepping right, stepping left, stepping right. So all that he is doing by using this terminology is to make sure that we are aware of the movement whilst we are in the movement, not before the movement starts and not after the movement is completed. So that is why with the lifting of the leg, the word begins stepping right. Now again, just from my own experience, you can say whatever you like. For example, I like to say thank you. Sometimes instead of thank you or stepping right, I like to say Om. So that's really up to us, the word that we wish to choose. But the idea is to be aware of the movement as it is happening, not after it has happened and not before the movement starts. So you are in constant awareness of the movement. So like in breath awareness, you are in constant awareness of the breath going in, breath coming out. Here you are aware of the movement of moving one leg, moving another leg, and stopping. And as far as stopping is concerned, the instructions are again very similar, which is do the stopping consciously. So it's not as if you stopped immediately, you stopped, you start turning. Just pause there for a few seconds. Pause there for 10 seconds once you come to the end. And then when you're turning, turn very consciously. Quarter turn till you've taken a U-turn. Again, stop before you start. So everything is done very, very deliberately as a movement. And then you start your walk back again. Now, one question that I have for you is, for how long will you walk in one direction? For how long? As much as possible? Okay, not really. Because one is space can be restricted, and you may not even know how long have you really gone. So usually what we do is that we put a marker. It hasn't been stated so in the video, but ideally before you start this walking meditation, you just count your 10 regular steps. I remember as kids we would take those 22 steps and put those wickets when we were playing street cricket. So like that, take your 10 regular steps and put a marker at the end of those 10 steps. It can be your chappal, it can be just a branch, it can be your hanky, doesn't matter what it is. So put a marker approximately 10 counted feet ahead. And when you're walking, you do the stopping at the end of that line, when you have reached that. And then you take a U-turn. So naturally the start has a marker, the end has a marker. And therefore you know that your movement up and down is contained basically between these two markers. And the last thing is, for how much period are you expected to do this? Again, it's not mentioned, so let me ask. For how long will you do this walking meditation practice? "30 minutes? Any other guesses? "15, closer, 10 to 15. So again, the recommendation is 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. I mean, if 10 becomes 15 because you're enjoying it, that's okay. But again, what you have to remember is that the two operating principles of any of these practices is abhyas and anushasan. Abhyas and anushasan. So try and do it in a reasonable period of 10 minutes plus minus 2 minutes, and you're done. That's essentially it. If you want to walk after that, walk in nature, do your regular 45 minutes, 1 hour walk, 5 kilometer walk, that's a very different thing to do. Okay? So 10 minutes. So this is essentially walking meditation. So usually it's a great idea to combine a walking meditation along with a breath awareness practice through the day. Because one is movement oriented, the other is static in a sense. But in both, the whole idea is stay focused in awareness of the movement, either of the breath or of the leg. And if your mind wanders, keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back. The brownie points here are for bringing it back. Sometimes people say, yeah, I'm losing my concentration so much. Every time I get a thought and I get lost in it. That's fine. The appreciation is for coming back each time and not for losing it each time. So these are the two basic practices that help you to mentally de-stress, apart from many other advantages. And remember, many of you, since you work in the field, since you work in workshop, in your shop floors, remember that whenever you have to build a muscle, it's not as if that if you're going to lift a heavy weight, you're going to build your muscle at that point in time. So similarly, if you have to be in equanimity, if you have to be in a state of wellness mentally, this is building a muscle practice. You got to keep doing it on a regular everyday basis for weeks, for months, before you can have a claim to equanimity. Before it starts to impact you, that if an anger is coming, you can hold it in time. And not just hold it forcefully, but gently it diffuses. So these practices help you attain that state, but you got to stay with it for a longish period of time. So I'll just take some quick questions if there are any in the Q&A box. I'm opening that box up for a few minutes relating to both these meditative practices. And then I will move to the next practice. Okay, so I don't notice any questions, so I'm going to move on. As I said, you can keep putting the questions. In the end, I will have a look at it once again and answer any questions that may be remaining. So now I come to the next emotional de-stressor, being in gratitude. Before I say anything about gratitude, the only short and simple thing that I will say is that in order to bring wholesome well-being, one is what I call well-being of the mind. So the two practices that you did are well-being of the mind. The second is the well-being of the heart. And the two are different from each other, as you will understand, okay? Different kind of things emerge there. For example, mindfulness happens in the mind, compassion happens in the heart, gratefulness happens in the heart. So these two work in tandem with each other, emotional de-stressor of the heart and mindful de-stressor of the mind. So let's look at a practice of being in gratitude, but first let's understand this at a slightly deeper level.
Came to London Heathrow once. I came to the immigration officer. He said, "Are you married?" "I'm a monk." He said, "No, I was just cross-checking just in case." And then he said, "Can I ask you another one, please?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you not missing anything in life?" I said, "Of course I am." He said, "What?" I said, "Problems." You know what? He loved my answer. Believe me, hand on my heart, he stamped my passport, and as I'm walking out of the gate, he put his hand on my head, blessing me, said, "Son, remain like this. Son, remain like this. You will never have to go through any issues and your problems in life." But as I walked through the gate, I turned to him and told him, "Look, gentlemen, I must tell you something. Don't think that me as a monk is free from problems. Anyone who lives in this dog-eat, dog-live world, as they might say, or anyone who lives in this world full of rat race and pressures, whether it's you who are a student studying, or one of you corporates or business people who's working, or married man or lady who's kind of dealing with family life, or myself as a monk, we are all subject to our own pressures. We are all subject to our own stresses. We are all subject to our own individual worries and anxieties. Just the flavor is different. Just the flavor is different. My problems. You have yours, I have mine. And we all go through them, don't we? Oof. What do you do? What do you do? No one's life is going to be perfect. But we can choose to make our lives happier than what it is now. Will you ever find a perfect guy or a girl? They say a perfect guy is a guy who never fights, who never flirts, who never cheats, who never lies, who works hard, who takes care of the kids, who brings a big income home, who's very romantic, who's very loving, who's affectionate, and who doesn't exist. There's nothing like a perfect partner. There's nothing like a perfect house. There's nothing like a perfect job. There's nothing like a perfect life. We can't have a perfect life. We can definitely learn how to have a happier life. It's not the happy people who are thankful. It's the thankful people who are happy. And it's quite amazing. There's so much in life to be grateful for. It's very easy to say a thank you. Harder to mean a thank you. And hardest to live a thank you. No big deal, say a thank you. Thank you for your talk, sir. Thank you. Do you even mean it? Better than just saying it is to mean it. And better than to mean it is to live it. And living a thank you is reciprocation. We give back. We serve. Believe me, you, life will be different.
So in 1992, when I was 35 years old, I'm now going to be turning 63 this year, I was laid up with a heart attack. I was working in a company called Gillette at that time, fairly at the peak of my career. And when that heart attack happened to me, I probably had every reason to complain about life. And for the first, when I was recuperating in the hospital, I was thinking about it and saying, my God, why me? Why has God done this to me? Why has life done this to me? What's going to happen, etc. My organization is probably not going to give me a promotion anymore because I now have this whole stamp of a heart attack next to me, etc. But when I came out of the hospital, my mother handed over a book to me called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramhans Yoganand. She herself was a follower of Sri Aurobindo. She was quite a spiritual lady, used to have a daily meditative practice. And of course, it may have had some impact on me, but I never really got into that. I was too busy living my life. So when she gave that book to me and I started reading it, I think my life actually transformed. And I got into pranic healing. I actually set an intention at that time. I realized that probably the nature of job or the kind of job that I wanted to work with, which would give me a fair amount of happiness, would be different from where I was working today. So after a few years, I actually changed my job, and life turned out to be beautiful. It moved me in a very different orbit, in a very different trajectory. So when this incident was happening to me, I was complaining. But a few years down the line, I was grateful. So I think one big lesson personally for me has been, then there are occasions in our life when we might be complaining, but actually those occasions are teaching us something. And when you look back in hindsight, there is every reason to believe that it was a blessing for us. And I wonder if any of you has ever experienced that aspect in life. And if you have, it'll be just nice to get a narrative from you of any such experience in the chat box. something that you later felt grateful for, but when it was happening, you probably felt very betrayed. You probably felt unhappy. You were complaining. So this is just a point of reflection. If anybody has any narrative to give right now, you can give it. I'll wait for it for half a minute. And if there isn't, we will move forward. But it's important to look at your own life and reflect on it. And if nothing is forthcoming, then at least kindly share with me what are the key messages that you are taking away from what you just saw in the clipping. What are your key messages about gratitude, about life? Life is beautiful, okay. So life is not perfect necessarily, but that doesn't mean that you can't be happy, right? Be happy with whatever you have. The important question you also have to co-hold, Yash, is that if you be happy with whatever you have, are you going to stop aspiring? So what is the energy that helps you to aspire along with being contented? Yeah, everyone has his own problem, absolutely. Be thankful for life. There was an interesting story. There is a guy who went to a priest and he said that, listen, um, you are a man who is so advanced in life and evolved in life. Can you please help take away my problems? So the man said, okay, I will help you do that. But this is something I want you to do. There is a tree that you see out there. I want you to write down your problems on a piece of paper. And I want you to tie that piece of paper using a thread on the tree up there. And come back to me after one day. So this person did it and he saw a lot of threads actually tied out there. One day later, when this person came, this guy said, okay, now I want you to go to that tree and open any one thread other than yours. And I will bless you so that the problems that you have will be exchanged with the problems which are written on this piece of paper. And he was very happy. So he went and he opened one thread and read what was there in that piece of paper. And what he read there just completely bowled him over in fright, saying that, my God, this guy is going through this kind of problems. Mine seemed to be actually quite trivial as compared to this. So he says, no, I can't do this exchange. So he asks the Guruji for one more chance. The Guruji says, okay, put this back, open another one. He goes and opens another one. And again, he comes to the same conclusion that these problems are much bigger than mine. So finally, he folds his hands in front of the Guruji and he says, I think you've taught me my life's lesson. My problems are probably the best for me to carry with me. And he goes back feeling much happier within himself. So I think the clear message is that we may believe that our problems are much bigger than anybody else's, but each one of us carries our share of problems. And we are probably best positioned by life to be able to also deal with those problems, but only if we carry with us a sense of equanimity and to say that I must deal with them from a calm mind and a quiet heart rather than a troubled mind and an emotional heart. Yeah. So great comments coming. Life is full of challenges, accept them happily. Having fight with wife in initial time, now having good understanding. Thanks for sharing that. between us ignoring the things which create fight. This could be the story of many in our lives, actually. And thank you for authentically sharing it. It's bold of you to say that. So a couple of more things I want to say here about, being complaining versus being grateful. See, our education system actually prepares us to look at deficiencies. So the mind wants certainty, and when mind does not have certainty, mind looks at uncertainty as a deficiency. We always focus more on what we don't have rather than on what we have. Now let's say your child comes to you with a mark sheet which says 97, 96, 93, 77 in 4 subjects. Guess which one are you going to talk to him about first? 77. No prizes for guessing, right? When we have a performance management conversation in which our appraisal is being done, guess what is the bigger focus? What you did or what you didn't do? Or when you have business reviews happening and you have things where we exceeded our achievement and things where we did not meet our targets, guess where we spend 75% of our time? On the greens or the reds? Greens, which means what you actually did well. I mean, if that happens, that would be really great. The fact of life is that our systems, our mindset is more focused on what went wrong rather than on what went right. There is a whole science, in fact, which has developed over the last 15 years. I'm typing out this science. This science is called appreciative inquiry. Your HR will probably tell you more about it, but the science of appreciative inquiry actually focuses on what is going right, what is working well. Because when you spend more time discussing what is going right, what is working well, you create more energy to deal with what may need to be improved. So being in gratitude actually brings out that energy a lot more in us. So instead of having complaining days, in fact, there is that famous ad, Bhala uski kameez meri kameez se safed kaise? Just to translate, how come his shirt is whiter than mine? That is a deficiency mentality. The sufficiency mentality will say, my shirt is white, and that's good enough. So I think when you approach life with a sense of gratitude, and my Nitya Shanti tells me, what you think about and thank about, you actually bring about. So manifestation of something good happens by first being grateful for it and visualizing as if it has already happened. Some of you who may have, I don't know if anybody has read this book, Secret. Has anybody read this book, Secret? So the principle is the same. At the end of the day, for example, even our Shastras say, Yatha Drishti Tatha Shrishti, which means when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Okay? So there's a lot of power in thinking right, in being grateful for things that have yet to happen. That's the way to trump your subconscious and actually get and manifest what you may be needing in your life, not always what you may be wanting in your life. So this is really the principle of gratitude, and one of the key things in this video, which you may have seen, is one is to simply say it. Thank you, right? Well, as they say, the Englishmen have taught us thank you, and we often say it mechanically without really meaning it. So the next thing is to mean it. And the deepest thing is to live it. And I think that's really the essence of this message. So let's just spend a minute feeling grateful. So my question to you is, what are you grateful for in the moment? Can you just type it out? Any one or two things that you're grateful for in the moment. Just the way you got in touch with your breath consciously, get in touch with your gratitude consciously. A chance to live in this moment, yes. With every breath I take, it's a reaffirmation that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I'm healthy. Rajesh, you're still typing to all panelists. Valappu, you're also typing to all panelists. Just change that setting, otherwise people will not see what you're writing. So what are you grateful for in the moment? Some of the others, please. Sustaining this pandemic. Okay, I guess you mean something different, which means being able to live through this pandemic, right? So the life that you're living now is what you are grateful for. You're grateful for a healthy life. So the important thing again is, as the breath practice says, become conscious of your breath. A simple gratitude practice is become conscious of what you're grateful for. So usually a practice that I suggest to everybody is, before you go to sleep, can you just write down 3 things that you are grateful for the day that went past? Just 3 things that you're grateful for as the day went past. Maintain a diary. You can actually do it in your device these days. I came across a very good diary on the apps. It is by a gentleman called Pritish Sankhe. I'm typing it out in the chat box. Pritish Sankhe has a very nice diary. He went through his own personal experience, which made him start writing a diary, and then he created an app which is available both in iOS and in Android. So those of you who haven't really started this practice or haven't done it, just try it. At the end of the day, you must play with practices. Jo acha lage, what you like, you keep. What you don't like, you discard. But at the end of the day, whatever serves you well is something you must stay with. So one way of expressing gratitude is just simply to be grateful. And there are many other ways of expressing gratitude. So my question would be, how do you typically express your gratitude to others? Or are there any innovative ways in which you have seen gratitude being expressed to others by someone else if it's not you? So here I just want some narratives on expressing gratitude. What are some of the ways in which gratitude can be expressed? Either it is already being done by you, or you have seen it being done by somebody innovatively. So just put that in the chat box, please. Some interesting ways of expressing gratitude, or some ways in which you have done it yourself, interesting or not. So simply saying thank you, absolutely. That is the simplest way to express your gratitude. So Rupa, my invitation is, for example, instead of just saying thank you, can you actually write a gratitude note in which you mention a little bit of detail of why you're thankful? So that the person not only receives your thank you, but also the more precise reason for your being thankful. Absolutely, Rajesh, by thanking and whenever they required any support. So that's the serving part of it. That's the living in gratitude. Excellent. You know, there is a bit of a tip in coaching, for example. If you tell a person you've done a great job or this is a great presentation you made, you motivate them. But when you tell them what was great about the presentation that they made and you give them those 3 points, then you're actually coaching them and you're helping them to replicate what is it that they did great. So similarly, when you express your gratitude, not just by saying thank you, but by also saying what is it that you're specifically grateful for that they did, such behaviors get reinforced. Yeah, so try to resolve the issue within a scheduled period which faced. So that this is how, well, that is your nature, Dr. Radhesham, right? Or you mean that you try to actually express your gratitude by resolving issues within a scheduled period? To me, that seems more like a way of life that you have chosen to live. That's your value. So Dr. Radhesham, again, you're writing to all panelists and not to all panelists and attendees. One more reply. Any innovative ways that you have seen in your organization or in life? Let me share some with you. So for example, I remember going to a retreat. Retreat is a place where you spend a few nights and days together in silence. It's not as if you don't speak, but you're away from work. You're away from home. It gives you a chance to process things more deeply. So there, this conversation happened on gratitude, and we were all invited to write a detailed letter to one person whom we were grateful for, but we had probably not expressed it in some time. And I remember writing a rather detailed gratitude letter to my mother-in-law. You know, normally all of us will understand that we have difficult relationships with our in-laws. And so I wrote a detailed gratitude letter and I came back home. I didn't call her and read the letter out to her, but I came back home. We lived together and I shared that letter with her. And she actually broke down on reading that letter. And I can tell you it did an enormous amount to build a very positive relationship. Just that single letter shifted the orbit. So sometimes we are very, short with our words. We don't express in detail why we are grateful, actually giving reasons. So this is one opportunity to be doing it in more detail. Yeah, so appreciation letter or note, absolutely. Then gratitude jar is another interesting thing you can do in a family, for example. Or you can even do it at workplace when your pandemic is over and you're actually coming to work. So which means put together a gratitude jar. You can call it a gratitude and appreciation jar if you like. If some person has done something for which you're really grateful and you want to appreciate that person, just put that narrative on a piece of paper and put it in a jar. And maybe once every week you can open that jar and see how many are there and just read them out. You know, the people get together and you read it out as a small group. And that is really, really motivating. Of course, remember that, you know, if there is an empty gratitude jar at the end of a week, that is something which speaks for itself. So if you're a boss, try and be a role model and make sure that at least you are contributing some of them to the gratitude jar. Or if you're the one initiating it in a family, make sure that you've written something for many or most of the members of the family. Gratitude rock very simply is, I mean, I have seen this work very well. People often take a small stone, you know, nice, cute colored stone and put it in their wallet or put it in their purse. And often when you just touch the stone, so sometimes you just need to feel gratitude, you take out the stone and touch it. Sometimes when you have unconsciously touched it while trying to take something out, just pick it up for a moment and be in gratitude at that moment. So it just brings you back in touch with your sense of gratitude. Then gratitude to food. There is a very powerful meditation, for example, that when you sit down to eat, not only do you bless your food, but you bless the entire supply chain that has led you to for this food to come to the table. Starting right from the point somebody sowed a seed, from the time to somebody did the harvesting, from the time to how this food actually reached the mandi, and somebody who picked up the food from the mandi and brought it to your home, someone who lovingly cooked it, and someone who lovingly served it for you. And if you can consciously think of each and every member in the supply chain, it is going to be so beautiful. Gratitude diary is something I've already spoken about. And another nice way is to make a gratitude list. I'm often encouraging people to write down 108 things you're grateful for. 108 is a kind of a nice spiritual number, but we often can write, 5 things, 7 things. But can you write 108 things? Then you're going really deep into your own self and trying to dig deeper to say, what all are you grateful for? And you will actually find that you can make a list of 108 and you will feel awesome about it. So I think as far as gratitude is concerned, my only invitation is, I think in some ways we are always grateful, but it's like one of those practices which is like our breath. We don't consciously exhibit it. So the invitation is, can you consciously exhibit it, please? There are some ways in which I have mentioned, and if there are some other ways in which you do it already, or you can do it and do it at deeper levels, this is going to be a great emotional de-stressor for you. So any questions on gratitude before I move forward? So again, please put it in the Q&A box, but in the interest of time, allow me to move forward. So the next is a relational de-stressor. So as I said, there is mental, there is emotional, and there is relational. Relational necessarily means other people are involved. So when I'm expressing gratitude to others or appreciating others, it is nothing but relational. When I'm simply expressing that sense of gratitude to my own self in a diary, it is not really relational with others, but it is in relation to my own self. So we'll just play an awesomeness game in relational de-stressor. This is again something that I invite you to do. So the awesomeness game is simply, I want you to write down in the chat box, what is awesome about you? What's awesome about you? Often what happens is we have a very bad opinion of ourselves. We always feel that there are so many things that we don't do. But my belief is that this world has taken 13.8 billion years to get you to the point where you are. How can you not be perfect? So there is also perfection within you. So can you please share what are you awesome about in the chat box? Let us celebrate ourselves as well, our beauty as well. Beautiful. So patience is your awesomeness, Govardhan. Thank you. Again, you're writing to all panelists, Govardhan. So please change the setting to all panelists and attendees in the to box. You're honest. Thank you, Rupa. Your honesty is your awesomeness. How wonderful. Your handwriting. Beautiful. Beautiful. I remember I have a good handwriting and I was ragged in college where I wrote some 80 pages for my seniors. So this can sometimes be a boon and sometimes be a bane. And nowadays, you don't even use your handwriting, which is so sad. Positive thinking. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Govardhan. And thank you for shifting to all panelists and attendees. Shayad, again, you're using all panelists. So you will have to say all panelists and attendees. But you said accepting happily. Honesty, friendly and respecting people. Beautiful. That's what is awesome about you. Excellent. And now I'm shifting the awesomeness game. Please share what is awesome about a colleague. Any colleague may or may not be present in this session today, But what's awesome about, so name the person and say, this is what is awesome about them. Name the person. Let's take this to the next level. Let's create positive energy. I call this POSSIP, positive gossip. POSSIP. What's awesome about XYZ? Okay, Anita is understanding. Yeah, so what about your old boss, Mr. Rajgopal Govardhan? Can you say what is awesome about him? We don't want to know only who is awesome, but what is awesome about them? Because people should be able to relate to that, right? Very calm and friendly. Excellent. So these are some qualities that you find awesome. He's patient, S. Balakrishna. He's patient. Beautiful. Okay. So Madhuswami, very energetic. Excellent. Tremendous knowledge with my colleague Rama. So something about Mr. Nagali. Bharati and Arun, good cross-functional support. Excellent. Mr. Sachin Namade for his leadership quality. So again, it's a good idea to know exactly what kind of leadership quality. Try and be more specific. When you're appreciating somebody for their awesomeness, be a little more specific. The leadership quality of da da da. Mention it. For being hardworking, absolutely. Many are hardly working, but some are hardworking. So you get the gist of it, right? So the idea is, can we play the gratitude jar? Can we play the awesomeness game at the family level, at the colleague level? Sometimes it doesn't matter in a WhatsApp. Can you just send, this is what is awesome about you? Let it be a surprise. It doesn't have to be any specific time when you're going to do it, but any time. So really, that's my invitation as far as the awesomeness game is concerned. One more game. This game is called the Rose Thorn Bird game. So what you do here is, when you're sitting down with a team or when you're sitting down with a family, for example, for dinner, you ask each family member to state their rose, their thorn, and their bud. So for example, let's say 4 people are sitting together for dinner. First, everybody will report a rose. What's a rose? A rose is something which is your high point for the day or the relative period which has gone by. So for example, what is my high point of the day? My high point of the day, my rose for the day, is exactly this opportunity of being able to spend this wonderful time together, giving some tools, techniques, practices to people which can make their life better. This is my high point of the day. This is my rose for the day. So can some of you write your rose for the day? What's your rose for the day? And if you can't think of the day, just think of the previous day or the previous few days. It doesn't always have to be just that day, right? The visible past. What is in your random access memory? Shaikh, you are continuing to write to all panelists. Kindly change that to all panelists and attendees. Radheshyamji is a good guide and solution. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so I want to hear your rose. What is your high point for the day or the last few days which have gone by, or the last week which has gone by? Just a few examples so that we understand that you get it. Okay, so understanding the practice of breath awareness and realizing it is your high point for the day. Thank you. So it may not necessarily be relating to this webinar that you're attending. It could be for something else as well. Anyone else? Your high point of the day, week? Beautiful. You were appreciated. You're appreciated by the team for managing and rewarded. But that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Getting TCU equipment, which was you're following from the last 4 months. Right, excellent. So when you get in touch with a rose, it makes you feel good. Okay, by management. Right, I got it. Thank you. So if we understand what a rose is, let's come to what a thorn is. A thorn is something that I feel that's my low point, as opposed to a rose, which is my high point. The thorn is my low point for the day or the low point for the period that I'm looking at. Yeah. But when I share a thorn, I don't share only the thorn, but I also share my learning from it. So for example, my thorn or low point is the fact that I am unable to sit and do this session with you face to face. That's a low point because, you know, sessions like this, just to see the energy, just to feel the energy is something that you miss it. So that is my low point. But my learning from it is nothing but a sense of gratitude saying, well, at least I can do it this way. At least there is an opportunity to do it this way. So that's my thorn. And that is my learning from the thorn. So providing support to COVID patients was your rose. So can you please share some thorn and some learning also? Just a couple of you. Just 1 or 2 examples. My low point and my learning from it. What happens is if you only share a low point, so hota kya, energy falls. And that is one of the reasons why we don't just leave it, the conversation at sharing the low point, but also sharing your learning from it. Right, so you're still talking about a rose, Feroz, which is purchased bicycle for my daughter, and she is very happy. Yeah. So no proper support from the hospital staff in arranging plasma for COVID plus. That's your thorn. And any learning from this? System internet often disconnected. That's a thorn. So learning might be that I need some kind of a prevention, for example. Like in my system internet as a facilitator, I had to make sure that I actually got all my connections put on an inverter so that even if power goes off, at least I'm able to continue training. So sometimes the learning is prevention, sometimes the learning is acceptance. That is a typical learning that comes from a thorn. And the last is a bud. Bud is something that I'm looking forward to. So rose is my high point, thorn is my low point with a lesson, and bud is what I'm looking forward to either today or tomorrow or in the next 1 week. So for example, today at 4 o'clock, I have a very dear friend of mine who's taking a webinar on a subject of entrepreneurship, a subject very dear to my heart. And I'm really looking forward to it. In fact, the session was originally meant to be in the afternoon, and because it has been moved to the morning, it gives me an opportunity to attend this session, which was otherwise clashing. So that is a great source of joy to me, something I'm looking forward to. So that's my bud. Okay. So this is another game that you can play, rose, thorn, and bud. So with that, I'm just going to share with you an exercise. This is an exercise that I'm not going to talk about in detail here, but you are going to receive a detailed note on this from HR. And I would like you to read that note. And those of you who feel called to practice it, they practice it. But sphere of silence is nothing but spending the first 1 hour of your day in silence and in prioritizing the important things, reflecting on the past, prioritizing the present, and envisioning the future a little bit. And sitting in silence and also reading something inspirational and making key points from your memory. So there are 3 things that you do in that 1 hour, and you can read that in the booklet which will be given to you, in the note PDF that will be given to you. And we are going to be forming a WhatsApp community with the attendees. And I would like you to ask questions about sphere of silence and even about some of the other practices that you're doing in that space. So if anybody has a question, you can ask that question. I do have a 5-minute video with me. It's a proprietary video, so it will not be available on YouTube for you. But if at some stage we feel the need to see it, we can maybe set up a quick 10-minute session where some of you can attend it. But for the moment, I think reading it is going to be pretty good. There is a gentleman by the name of Eknath Easwaran who has come out with this tool. He has in fact even authored a book on it. So those of you who get deeply interested can actually dive deeper. So with that, I come to the end of my session. And once again, I would like to repeat the life hacks to happiness in a summary. Something which I haven't mentioned, but is a great antivirus that we can install. Sometimes when we think negative thoughts, we think bad thoughts, and these thoughts get us down. The installation of antivirus for that is a word called cancel. So whenever you have bad thoughts, just say cancel. If you have very bad thoughts, say cancel, cancel. If you're really feeling down because of your those thoughts, say cancel, cancel, cancel. So sometimes somebody else says something to you which might create negativity, say cancel. Sometimes in a group, if somebody is bringing up something negative, which might, depreciating some others, say cancel. So this is a nice way of shifting the energy for yourself and for the group. The second is POSIP, which is simply saying you're so awesome, appreciating people, for example. And then the next is Yatha Drishti Tatha Shrishti, which is what I think about and thank about, I bring about. And the last is, I am so grateful. Everything is teaching me in the end. Everything is a lesson for me. I must understand what that is. Sometimes I may not understand it in the moment. So with that, I come to the end of my session. I have 2 keywords for you. I use these terms in Hindi, but I realize you may understand English better. The Hindi terms were Abhyas and Anushasan. It's not very complicated to be happy. And happiness is what brings success. It's not the other way around. Success doesn't necessarily bring happiness, because otherwise you keep. But regular practice, that is what is meant by Abhyas, and a discipline. This is important. So whatever I have shared with you, take one thing if you like, take two things if you like, but stick with them routinely and regularly. And I'm pretty sure that you will discover your life hacks to happiness. So with that, I would like to end the session. It'll be very nice to see some comments from you as to what you liked most from this session that you will take away for your own personal implementation. Kindly share that with me, and don't forget to fill the feedback form that will come to you, because I would like to know what's gone well and what can be improved. So with those last words from you of what is it that you really liked in this session that you will take away for practicing personally, we will bring this to a close. And if there are any Q&As which are there, I'm happy to stay back, because I don't see anything being written in the Q&A chat box. So if there is any questions that somebody has, You can type them in and you can wait while others can leave after sharing with me what they liked about the session.